Today we're going over some of the most brutal stories of revenge in human history. We're talking about revenge so extreme that if these people had access to group chats, half of history would have ended with a very concerning message saying, "You up." From ancient queens who turned entire cities into barbecue, to Roman politicians who literally came back for the people who kidnapped them, these are some of the most insane revenge stories ever recorded. So let's get into it. Number 1, Olga of Kiev and the Drevlians. We're starting this list with quite possibly one of the greatest ride or die stories in human history. Except in this case, Olga was the ride. And the Drevlians were very much going to die. It's the year 945, and Prince Igor is ruling Kievan Rus. The Drevlians are a neighboring tribe that had been paying tribute to Igor's government. Basically, they were paying protection money, except the protection was from the same government collecting the money. Very efficient system. Eventually, Igor decides the tribute isn't enough and travels to the Drevlian capital to collect more. The Drevlians reluctantly pay him. And that should have been the end of it. Igor gets his money. The Drevlians get to keep their lives. Everyone goes home. But Igor apparently looks at his payment and thinks, "You know what this needs? More money." So he turns around and goes back. The Drevlians are understandably annoyed. They basically tell him that he's already been paid and that he should leave. Igor disagrees. This disagreement becomes extremely physical. The Drevlians capture Igor and execute him in one of the most horrifying ways imaginable. According to later accounts, they tied his legs to 2 bent trees and then released them. The trees snapped back. Igor was torn apart. And now the Drevlians had a problem. Because Igor had a wife. Her name was Olga. And Olga was not exactly interested in forgiving and forgetting. The Drevlian ruler, Prince Mal, somehow decides this is a fantastic opportunity. He sends around 20 ambassadors to Olga. Their message is basically, "Hey, sorry about your husband. Anyway, want to marry me?" This is already an insane level of confidence. Imagine killing someone's husband and then sending her a marriage proposal. That's not shooting your shot. That's shooting yourself. But Olga doesn't immediately attack them. Instead, she says she will consider the proposal. She tells the ambassadors to wait in their boat and promises to send men for them the next morning. The ambassadors think everything is going perfectly. They are about to become part of a royal marriage. The next morning, Olga's men arrive. They pick up the entire boat. The ambassadors are probably thinking, "Wow, excellent customer service." Then they carry them straight to a giant trench. The boat is thrown into the trench. The ambassadors are thrown in with it. And Olga orders the hole to be filled. The entire group is buried alive. But Olga isn't finished. She sends another message to Prince Mal. She tells him to send his most important nobles to escort her back to the Drevlian capital. And because the first group of ambassadors has mysteriously stopped responding to messages, the Drevlians apparently think, "Yeah, this sounds safe." They send another group. Olga welcomes them and tells them to relax in a bathhouse before meeting her. The nobles enter the bathhouse. The doors are locked, and Olga's men set the building on fire. At this point, the Drevlians have probably started realizing that Olga's wedding invitations have a terrible survival rate. But Olga still has one more move. She travels to the Drevlian capital and tells them she wants to hold a great funeral feast for her husband. The Drevlians agree. They prepare an enormous feast. There is food. There is alcohol. There is probably somebody in the corner saying, "Guys, I have a weird feeling about this." Nobody listens. Olga encourages everyone to drink. And they drink. A lot. Eventually, thousands of Drevlians are drunk and celebrating. Meanwhile, Olga's soldiers are completely sober, because apparently they understood the assignment. Then Olga gives the order. Her soldiers attack. The feast turns into a massacre. According to the traditional account, thousands of Drevlians are killed. Prince Mal is killed as well. But Olga still isn't satisfied. She returns with an army and besieges the Drevlian capital. The city holds out for more than a year. Eventually, the starving Drevlians ask what they can do to make her leave. Olga gives them a strange request. She says she will leave if every household gives her 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows. The Drevlians are confused. But compared with everything else Olga has done, this sounds like an absolute bargain. They hand over the birds. Olga's soldiers attach burning material to the birds and release them. The birds fly back to their nests throughout the city. Unfortunately for the Drevlians, those nests happen to be inside buildings. Suddenly fires begin breaking out everywhere. The city burns. The Drevlians are defeated. And Olga gets her revenge. So remember, if somebody murders your husband, don't immediately send them a wedding invitation. Because apparently Olga already had that business model. Number 2, Julius Caesar and the pirates. Next up, we have one of the funniest examples of somebody being kidnapped and somehow becoming the most intimidating person on the boat. It's the year 75 BC. A young Julius Caesar is traveling across the Aegean Sea when Sicilian pirates attack his ship. They capture Caesar and demand a ransom. The pirates look at Caesar's clothing, his servants, and his general level of rich person energy and decide he's probably worth some money. They demand 20 talents. Caesar is offended. Not scared, offended. He basically tells them, 20. You guys think I'm only worth 20. He tells them they should demand 50 talents instead. That's roughly equivalent to a fortune today. The pirates agree. They probably thought they had just kidnapped the world's easiest billionaire. But Caesar starts behaving strangely. He walks around the pirate camp like he owns the place. He exercises. He eats with them. He talks to them. And then he starts reading his speeches and poems to them. The pirates are forced to listen. Imagine kidnapping someone and accidentally becoming their unpaid audience. Eventually, Caesar tells the pirates that their poetry is terrible. Then he tells them that once he's free, he's going to crucify every single one of them. The pirates laugh, because obviously the prisoner is joking. Right. After about 38 days, Caesar's ransom arrives. The pirates release him. They sail away with their money. And Caesar immediately does something completely normal. He raises a fleet. He hires soldiers. And he goes hunting for the pirates. He finds their island, captures them, takes back the ransom money, and arrests everyone involved. Now Caesar has a decision. He could simply send them to prison. He could let them go. Or he could do exactly what he promised. The pirates are crucified. There is, however, one tiny act of mercy. According to the ancient account, Caesar had their throats cut first so they wouldn't suffer as long on the cross. Which is probably the closest thing to a customer satisfaction policy you'll ever see in ancient Rome. The pirates thought they had kidnapped a rich young man. Instead, they accidentally kidnapped the future dictator of Rome. Worst vacation ever. Number 3, the 47 Ronin. Now we move to Japan. And this story is less about one person getting revenge and more about 47 men spending 2 years pretending they didn't care. Which is honestly terrifying. The story begins in 1701. A Japanese lord named Asano Naganori is ordered to serve at the shogun's court. One of the officials responsible for teaching him court etiquette is a man named Kira Yashinaka. Kira is supposedly arrogant, demanding, and extremely unpleasant. And according to the traditional story, Asano doesn't exactly enjoy being around him. Eventually, Kira insults Asano one time too many. Asano snaps. Inside Edo Castle, he draws a sword and attacks Kira. He manages to cut Kira but doesn't kill him. Asano is arrested. And because drawing a weapon inside the shogun's palace is a very serious offense, Asano is ordered to commit seppuku. His lands are confiscated. His household is destroyed. And his samurai become masterless. These men are now known as Ronin. Meanwhile, Kira receives no equivalent punishment. The surviving followers of Asano are furious. But they can't just attack Kira. They would be hunted down immediately. So they wait, and wait, and wait, for 2 years. During those 2 years, they deliberately make everyone believe they have forgotten about revenge. Some take ordinary jobs. Others disappear. Their leader, Oishi Kuronasuk, behaves especially badly. He drinks heavily. He visits brothels. He separates from his family. People watching him probably think, well, that guy really fell apart. That was the point. Kira hears about Oishi's behavior and becomes convinced the threat is gone. He reduces his security. And that's exactly what the Ronin were waiting for. On January 30, 1703, 47 of Asano's former samurai gather in Edo. They surround Kira's residence. This isn't some angry mob. They have planned this for years. They attack from multiple directions. Archers guard the exits. The guards inside fight back. But the Ronin are experienced warriors. They push through the house. Eventually they find Kira hiding. Oishi recognizes him by the scar left by Asano 2 years earlier. The Ronin capture him. They offer Kira the chance to die honorably through seppuku. He refuses, so the Ronin execute him. They then carry Kira's head to Asano's grave. They tell their fallen master that his death has been avenged. And then they surrender themselves to the authorities. The shogunate eventually orders the 47 Ronin to commit seppuku. They obey. Their story becomes legendary. And honestly, the lesson here is terrifying. If someone says they've forgotten about revenge, that's great. But if they spent the last 2 years becoming a carpenter, a merchant, and a professional alcoholic, maybe check the attic. Number 4, the Roman revenge against Hannibal's allies. Now let's go back even further. Rome and Carthage spent years trying to destroy each other. And one of Rome's greatest enemies was Hannibal. You know, the guy who crossed the Alps with elephants. Because apparently regular armies weren't dramatic enough. During the Second Punic War, Hannibal's army destroyed Roman forces across Italy. Rome eventually turned the war around. But revenge didn't stop when Hannibal was defeated. Rome became extremely interested in making sure its former enemies understood exactly who had won. One of the most brutal examples came with the city of Carthage itself. After years of conflict, Rome and Carthage eventually entered another war in 149 BC. The Romans demanded the Carthaginians surrender their weapons. They did. Then Rome made another demand. The Carthaginians had to abandon their city and move inland. At that point, the Carthaginians basically realized, wait a minute, you weren't negotiating. You were just giving us a countdown. The Carthaginians refused. They rebuilt weapons in secret. Men who had never been soldiers began making weapons. Women reportedly contributed their own hair for bowstrings. The city prepared for war. Rome attacked. The siege lasted 3 years. Eventually, Roman troops broke through. The fighting became brutal street by street. The Carthaginians were defeated. The city was destroyed, and thousands of survivors were sold into slavery. Carthage had once been one of the most powerful cities in the Mediterranean. Now it was gone. Rome had won, and the Mediterranean had just learned the Roman version of. Never let me catch you doing that again. Number 5, Vlad the Impaler and the Ottomans. Finally, we have Vlad III of Wallachia. You may know him by another name, Vlad the Impaler. And yes, the nickname is exactly as pleasant as it sounds. Vlad ruled Wallachia during a period when the region was caught between powerful enemies, including the Ottoman Empire. Vlad was known for using brutal punishments against people he considered enemies, criminals, or traitors. His favorite method was impalement, which is basically exactly what it sounds like. People were placed on large wooden stakes, and Vlad used this punishment on a scale so extreme that his reputation became legendary. One of the most famous stories comes from Vlad's conflict with Sultan Mehmed II. The Ottoman army invaded Wallachia with a massive force. Vlad knew he couldn't defeat such a huge army in a conventional battle, so he used psychological warfare. He attacked Ottoman supply lines. He ambushed soldiers. He destroyed food. He burned villages so the invading army couldn't use them. And then came the truly terrifying part. As the Ottoman army advanced toward Vlad's capital, they reportedly encountered a forest of impaled bodies. Thousands of stakes. Thousands of dead. The sight was so horrifying that even the Ottoman soldiers were shaken. The story says Sultan Mehmed himself saw the scene and realized that conquering Wallachia would be far more difficult than expected. Because imagine marching hundreds of miles with an enormous army and then arriving at your destination only to discover that the enemy has basically decorated the entire landscape with your dead soldiers. That's not a battlefield. That's a warning label. Vlad's brutality became legendary. Eventually, however, he was defeated and killed. His exact death remains surrounded by uncertainty. But his reputation survived for centuries. And centuries later, Western literature transformed Vlad into the inspiration for one of fiction's most famous monsters, Dracula. So Vlad wanted people to fear him. Mission accomplished. He just probably didn't expect the marketing department to turn him into a vampire. So those were some of the most extreme revenge stories in history. Olga turned revenge into a multi-stage master plan. Caesar got kidnapped and responded by personally hunting down his kidnappers. The 47 Ronins spent 2 years pretending they had moved on before showing up at Kira's house like the world's most patient hit squad. Rome turned generations of conflict into one of the most destructive victories of the ancient world. And Vlad the Impaler turned psychological warfare into something that would haunt his enemies for centuries. The weirdest part about all of these stories is that revenge almost never happens immediately. The most terrifying revenge stories usually involve patience, planning, and a person quietly thinking, "Don't worry, I'll deal with this later." And that might be the scariest sentence in human history. Because sometimes later means tomorrow. Sometimes it means 2 years. And sometimes it means an entire army showing up at your front door. So the next time you're angry at someone, remember, you don't have to take revenge. You can simply let history do it for you. Or preferably just block them. Much cheaper, much safer, and considerably less likely to result in an international incident. History isn't dead. It's waiting to be told.